move back, or what do we do for resilience? This is the conversation we're having, and I'd like you to join us. 722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can tweet us at CBC Crosstalk or send us an email, crosstalk@cbc.ca. So we're going to move to a piece of tape, and so this is 10 minutes. So if you do call, you're going to wait 10 minutes, but the queue is there, and please do. But I spoke with Glenn McGillivray. He's the managing director of the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, and so this thing was established by Canada's Property and Casualty Insurance Industry as an independent, not-for-profit research institute affiliated with Western University. So it's known as the Center for Multidisciplinary Disaster Prevention Research and Communication. So I gave Glenn a call yesterday to talk about a program they have to help communities rebuild after being hit by natural disasters. Give this a listen. I'm curious about resilience and recovery and that program you're telling me about.
So Resilience and Recovery is a new program for us. And the idea is that we would work with communities that have been hit with large disasters and help them work through it all and make sure that when they do put things back, that they put things back better, that they're more resilient after the fact, so that if there is a repeat event, it will either be completely prevented or at least greatly mitigated. So we're currently working with 3 communities in the country that have been hit by disasters. We're working with the village of Litton in BC that was almost completely leveled by wildfire in June of last year. We're working with the city of Calgary who got hit with a major hailstorm in June of 2 Junes ago. That was Canada's costliest hailstorm by far. And we're working with Barrie, Ontario, which got hit with a significant tornado summer of last year.
The work that you're doing, how does that, what's the process like for when you're working with these communities?
Yeah, so first we do some outreach and find out if they're interested, of course. And then we look at the nature of the problem. We get the thoughts of the local communities, and we decide what the best course of action to take is. And so with Litton, we determined that almost that entire community will have to be rebuilt. So the best course of action would be to rebuild it better so that it can withstand the next wildfire that may come. The thing about Litton is it was a grass fire that led to the loss of that village. It wasn't a fire in the forest, quote unquote. Grass regenerates very quickly, so that means that Litton is pretty much always going to be at risk. And so it was our determination that we would help Litton with a new bylaw that would require that the homes there be put back in a better way so that they're more resilient against wildfire, and that so they have certain features to them that make them more robust.
And can you elaborate a bit on just what like a feature would be in this situation?
Sure. So we're using the National Research Council's Wildland Urban Interface Fire Guide as a guidebook here. This was a publication put out by the federal government about a year and a half ago. And some of the things that that document looks at is not using vinyl siding, for example, in homes that are in harm's way for fire. So instead, we'd use a concrete fiber board, like a hardy board type of product. We look at a non-combustible roof, which some people think has to be metal, but it's not true. We can use a non-combustible asphalt shingle, and better windows, and something that really doesn't fall under the building code, but not having combustible items around the general immediate circumference of the home. So this bylaw would prevent certain planting around the house, depending on the vegetation. It would get propane tanks away from the home. It would get sheds and wood fences and things like that away from the home. Anything that can be combustible in the case of a wildfire. So this is all being folded into a bylaw. The bylaw has reached third reading and is now in the province's hands. So British Columbia, once they approve it, will be able to get on with rebuilding that community in a more fire smart kind of way.
And I don't know how deeply you can go into this, but if you think about a community and the surrounding area for Port aux Basques, right? So after Fiona, and with the damage, some houses completely gone, many severely damaged. What types of things would you be, and I know there's a whole process to go through, but like, what are some of the things that you would kind of look at or talk with or think about bringing into a community such as Port aux Basques for trying to build back better?
Yeah, so one of the main ideas of building back is sometimes not building back at all. And so when we look at the highest of the high-risk properties in places like Port aux Basques, those structures that are immediately on the coast, on a rocky crag sitting there with the ocean just a few feet away, it would be a very serious consideration not to put those properties back in that place. And I know it's tough. I know it's very unfortunate and sad. Our hearts go out to the people there. But they're going to be facing this again and again and again. And we've lost some lives during Fiona. Unfortunately, if we continue to build in these high-risk places, we're going to lose more. And so that's the first and foremost consideration, is perhaps not putting things back where they were before. And with sea level rise and things like that, it's just such a key consideration. The other thing is to build the homes there with high wind in mind. And so we have a whole list of features that can go into new construction that would make a home more robust and more resilient against extreme wind. As bad as Hurricane Ian was in Florida, a few communities were hit that had really up-to-date building codes. These were post-Hurricane Andrew building codes. And those communities in Florida did actually quite well in the face of Ian. And we can do that here in Canada with just a few added features to a home and very little added expense. So that's another thing. Wind-driven rain and water. There are various things that you can do to make a home more resilient against heavy rainfall and surface flooding. So those are some of the areas that we would look at to make a home more robust in a place like Port aux Basques.
And you've reached out to the town too, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're not sure if it's a good idea right now. We know that they're extraordinarily busy right now, and they probably might not want to hear from us right yet. But we may talk to them in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, just given the appropriate time and everything else. Well, I know you know a whole lot about the insurance world, and the story that we're following this week, and it's probably no surprise to you, but a lot of folks who are trying to see about insurance are finding out now that they're not covered. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about where things are at with insurance companies and these types of large-scale disasters because of extreme weather and coverage.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate circumstance. I don't want to get into it too much because it's not really ours to say about coverages and things like that. But certainly there are some concerns about construction quality and age. Some of these really old salt box wooden type of structures that are sitting on a crag and not really fastened down very well probably wouldn't be insured. And also, while Canadians can buy insurance for overland flood, usually saltwater-related flooding is excluded, so that would exclude storm surge from the mix, unfortunately. I've heard a few instances, too, of how homes are heated are not really up to the standards of insurance companies, so heating with wood is fine as long as certain things are done and certain measures are taken. And the same with oil, but some people's homes are quite old and the heating systems are quite old, and they don't really meet up with contemporary standards, and so that's a concern as well. So there's a few things going on here. On one hand, some people may not be able to get insurance for their property. On the other hand, some people may not have purchased it even if they had the chance because of, low household income and the construction quality of their home and that sort of thing.
I'm just thinking again on building codes that you mentioned. Is there going to be, as we start to try to build better and plan better and be resilient when it comes to climate change, is there going to be any sort of a risk for a gap in expertise for how to do this stuff depending on where we are in the country?
I don't think so. A lot of these measures are very well known. And see, this is the frustrating part. We really know what to do. it's not like it's a mystery. There are a lot of people in this country that are working on the building sciences end of things that know all these things very, very well. We work very closely with engineers at Western University, for example, and they're leaders on the wind side. But there are also groups doing work on basement flooding and wildfire and so on and so forth. The body of knowledge is there, and it's also transferable from other places. We learn a lot from, managing wind in the southern states, managing wildfire in places like California and places like that. The body of knowledge is there, and if you went to our website at ICLR.org, you'd see so much of it there. So it's just so frustrating that, we know what to do, we just have to really get on with it.
And then I guess this can go to my final question for you, and I think you kind of just answered it, but when it comes to other communities, and this is a Provincial Newfoundland and Labrador show, so communities that have seen what just happened in and around Port aux Basques and also for the hits to the other parts of Atlantic Canada, what's your advice for these other communities as they try to plan for what's to come?
Well, I think really learn from the problems and the mistakes of other places and make sure they don't happen in your place. Take the bull by the horns and start planning and putting actions into place to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the first place. If we plan to recover rather than just wing it after something happens, we'll be in a much better place than we were before. And so really, we publish case studies we have case studies over 100 communities in Canada that have taken action to be more resilient. Look at those case studies and learn from other places and see what can be implemented in your community.
Glenn, thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
That was my conversation yesterday with Glenn McGillivray, the Managing Director of the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. I'm Adam Walsh. This is CrossTalk. We are talking about